The most common critique I get is lacking body awareness or not aesthetically pleasing. I seem to have gotten to the point where I can be where the lead wants me to be, and I get many compliments for being a good follow. I'm putting quotes just where they're put, where the quotes are in the response. But they say, in terms of how I move and get to each point, it's not pretty yet. So how do I make things, pretty or look good? As far as, I'm going to answer this for leads and follows, for, whether you want to look pretty or whether you want to look just like masculine, or what, just to make it look aesthetically pleasing, let's say. What are the ways that we can do that? And I would say, there's two things you want to look at when you're looking for making something aesthetically pleasing. Maybe there's more than two things, but let's go with three things, let's say. So the first thing you want to think about is probably the easiest thing to think about is your lines. When you're static, meaning when you're not moving, and that happens at the edge point of moves, right? So if we look at, my main dance is Lindy Hop. For you guys, that don't do Lindy Hop, just think of your basic step in your dance. They all have the same concepts involved, right? So if we look at any basic dance and its step, right? There's these moments where there's kind of a stop in motion or a redirect in motion. Right, in the Lindy Hop, it's the swing out on the 1 area, or the 7-8 area. There's one, and then also on the 3-4 5-ish area. There's one. So if you look, I'll just show you what it looks like to start. You go. If I'm a follow, it would be boom, boom, 3 and 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Right, and that's a really basic version of it. But so the moments that I want to think about my lines are, okay, let's look at the 3 and 4. This moment here is a point where I've stopped and I'm starting to redirect, right? So that's a nice, easy point to think about. Okay, what are my lines? What do I want to look like as far as my dance goes? And you want to break it down to each individual joint that you have. So if you imagine the joint between my foot and my ankle, or right, the ankle joint, has an angle to it. Let me move that down just a little. Right, so if I'm here, that's a different angle. Then if I'm here, different. These are all different angles that are being created in that ankle joint. So what angle do I want to create, right? For the most part, like in Lindy Hop, we tend to not want to have too much bent knee here in this direction. We like to have more of the bend in this area of our body. That's aesthetics. Like, it really depends. But if you look at like what's a pretty angle, right? Like if you look at this motion, we've got a straight line, and then we've got a little bit of a bend. And then if you look at my bend here, you see how my bend is kind of matching in my waist as in my knees. So my knee bend is like this, and then my waist bend is the same angle going the other way, right? So that looks nice. It has that aesthetic appeal to it. Whereas if I were to be straight like this, now we've got the straight line and the leg bend, right? It's not, it doesn't have the symmetry that we're looking for. It's not to say you couldn't have that angle look cool, especially if you're using counterbalance or something. But then if you did want that, you'd want it to be really super straight, right? Like super straight line. Think of this, like anytime you're looking at lines, like we want to paint a picture for someone. And the more clear the picture is, the easier it is for someone to understand, right? So if I am drawing a line, right, and I create like the perfectly straight line, right, that's a little more aesthetically pleasing than if I draw that line and I'm like not really clear about it. There's a little bit of squiggliness in it, right? That's not as aesthetically pleasing. But if I were to then draw very clear curves where it's intentional curves, then it becomes aesthetically pleasing again, right? So So it's really about looking at what are the angles that I'm creating, and do I have intention behind them is the main thing. So straight lines are very intentional. 90 degrees are also very intentional, right? Having a 90-degree angle is very intentional. Having a 45-degree tends to be very intentional. So those are all angles that you can play with in your own body to make something look nice, right? So I'm thinking, okay, ankle joints, let's have them be straight. Well, technically that's 90-degree, right? Because it's the foot's going this way and the leg's going up. So we've got 90-degree there. Then we've got like a 45-degree in the knee and a 45-degree in the waist, right? From the leg to the stomach, right? And then the head like you could do this, but that's kind of a strange angle. I'm going to go for a straight up and down, like 45-degree, or not 45, a straight line from my back through my head, rather than kinking it back or kinking it forward or anything. Just kind of lifting it straight in the same direction, not straight up, right? But straight in the direction that my body is, right? And then the arms, I'm thinking about, okay, what angle does this arm with my body create, right? That's a 90-degree right there. That's parallel, right? 180, right? 90, or maybe a 45, right? And I tend to go with the 45s for the most part in Lindy Hop. This is again thinking about my own angles in my own body, not relating them to my partner. Another really cool way to make your dance look great is to match your partner's angles. And this goes regardless of whether you're lead or follow, right? Just whoever is more skilled in changing their angles of their body is the one that I recommend does this, right? Because most likely your partner doesn't even think about changing their angles unless they're really advanced. So by you having the knowledge that you can change, I would suggest that you be the one that adjusts to your partner and matches their angles. So if they do, here, you're there. As soon as they move out of it, you move out of it, right? And you're matching all their angles. That's a really clear way to be aesthetically pleasing, because as a couple, you become symmetric. You become matching each other. So that's at specific moments we're thinking about these angles, right? And if you think about the moment of the 4 is the redirect here. And then on 5, 6, you go 5, 6, 7, and 8. Somewhere in here, you're also getting kind of that stop motion. Again, within your styling, you might continue a little bit, but at some point, you've got to go back the other way. So there's that moment where you want to think, okay, these are the lines I'm hitting before I get that next motion forward, right? If we think of a rock step, if you're doing a rock step in your dance, right, you can do a rock step where you don't really have any clear lines in it, and it's just like rock step, or you can make a straight line through that leg, right? So you see this rock step here, I have a really straight line, and then in this leg, I'm not just kind of nothing with it, I've actually got it popped out, like using another angle in this part that's really clear. So I'm like, bam, right? So rock step, like, and it's not that you always have to do this or something, like, but that is something in Lindy Hop. If I'm doing a rock step, I am looking to create a line a lot of the time that makes it look nice, right? So I'm going boom. Well, technically it'd be on the other foot, sorry. So yeah, I just did that. Rock step on the other foot. Although I do rock steps on all sorts of different feet, but the basic on the 1, 2 we're looking at here, right? So we're looking at, there's my straight line in the back. Here's my bend in this leg that's pretty similar to the bend there, right? And then my arms, like if I'm looking at my arms and trying to match them, same thing. I've kind of got this same angles going on the arms between the shoulders, the armpits basically angles, and then the arms as well. Like if you look at this bend here versus this bend here, they kind of match up. If I were to move just the elbows, they end up matching up. It's just this one is put back, right? So I'm basically looking to be symmetric or to match my partner's symmetry, either my own symmetry or my partner's symmetry. And I hit that motion, I go through, boom, into the next motion. I'm looking to create those lines again through this part, sending my partner through, creating the lines again through the next motion, boom. So the static moments are a part to think about. Then, of course, the other thing, obviously, is the points where you're going through the motions, right? Those are the other moments that you want to think about how everything coordinates to line up to make nice lines. And the cool thing is, a lot of times in our dance, the lines that get created often make sense for the motions that are supposed to happen and things like that. So the more we connect our lines up, the easier the motions become as well. Assuming that we are looking for motions that connect up with our lines. Like for me, usually I actually look at it the opposite way. I always look at how do I make this the most efficient, or how do I make this happen the way that I want it to happen, and then the lines come out of it because of that. But usually it can go either way. I don't know if I should say usually, but often it can go either way. And often your lines will help your efficiency as well as your efficiency will help your lines. So we've got the rock, step. So now I'm thinking, okay, the transition, now I'm going in. As I go into this next movement, one of the other lines that I often look for, oh, this is an interesting one, is the difference between contra posture and, I don't know what the opposite word of contra posture is, but contra posture is the concept that when your left foot is forward, your right arm is forward, is like, that's I don't want to say horrible, but that's not a very accurate way of saying it, but that's kind of the classic way of saying it very easily, is that your left foot's forward, your right arm is forward, your left or your right foot is back, your left arm is back. So it's opposition of the upper body and lower body. And the reason why I say it's not the best way to describe contra posture is because it really, to me, contra posture is not about the arms and legs. It's about the upper body versus the lower body. And so I could take the arms out of it and I could do this motion, and my lower body is sort of twisting that way, sort of, or at least resisting going this way with my upper body, right? My upper body is going one way, my lower body's resisting it, sort of like I'm taking a sponge and twisting that sponge in opposite directions. So that's what, to me, contra posture is, the upper body going opposition to the lower body without the arms or with the arms. And the arms often are just an extension of that upper body and lower body motion, right? So if we just do that, then our arms go in the motion of it. And our lower body is resistant. Now, that opposed to when you're in line with your posture like this, right? So now my left arm is forward and my left foot is forward, or right arm, left arm, right? So we have two ways of walking forward. We can go in contra posture, right, the whole time, or we can go in, I'm going to call it in line, right? And either of these work, but to me, contra posture is more efficient. It takes less work once you get the motion down, because a walking step is technically, it's like either way, it's a rotation, right? If you watch, even if I do it this way, I rotate, boom, right? And if I do it this way, I'm still rotating a little. It's just a lot smaller. I don't have to rotate as much. So it's more efficient to walk this way because I don't have to rotate as much. I like to use contra posture. I don't know if it's possible to use it another way, but I use contra posture to stop rotation. So if you watch, if I want to continue rotation, I don't use contra posture, right? If I want to rotate, I'm going to actually take my left arm and my left foot forward and then continue that rotation on the next turn. So each step, it ends up going without contra posture, right? If I want to stop the rotation, right, of this motion, I swing in that contra posture and it stops me from rotating, right? So if you watch, if I'm going like this, boom, and I want to stop this next one, instead of going here and allowing the continuation, right, I'm going to go boom, like that, and actually stop the rotation from happening with my upper body. Or even possibly do it here, where I'm here, I'm going to actually stop my lower body and let my upper body go until it hits that rotation. And what that allows is not only it stop that rotation, but it can also make it easy to bounce off the other way, right? So when we're walking, we use this contra posture to make it easy to bounce off and go the other way, very simply. And it's not like we have to exaggerate that much. It can be something really small, but as we rotate through, like if you watch that motion, as I take this step forward, it's not like my foot goes and then my body rotates. It's happening all as we go together, and then it ends together. I hit that point where it's all done. And then if you watch, it's not the leg going and then the body, right? It's everything going together. It comes to the middle together, it goes, continues, and then ends all at the same time, if I'm looking for that contra posture. And so as you go through movements, you want to think about, am I using contra posture, or am I using an alignment to move through that movement, right? So if we watch rock step, right, we've got the contra posture on the rock, and then on the step, we come through, we're going to mid position, so still contra posture, and then we're going to rotate this way. So now we're rotating full, so we're not contra posturing, boom, right? And then we take it through, boom. And if I'm doing my style of swing out, well, one of the styles of swing out, I hit here, right? And then I want to just continue through like that. So I don't use contra posture. I'm going boom, boom. And it's not until at this point where I hit the triple step that I want to stop my rotation from happening, right? So I'm still allowing this rotation. If you think from the 3-4 rock step, after this moment, I'm continuing to let my body rotate all the way through until this moment right here where I want it to stop. And now you can see me starting to put my body back towards this position, switching up going back into contra posture where I do it again, right? So there's basically a contra posture on 1, 2, it comes out, it stays out, 3, and then it comes right back into it for the 1, 2 again. You can see right on the 8 kind of, I'm twisting back into the 1, 2. That's one style, but what I'm thinking about is, how do I have that contra posture? And again, this is the same for any dance you do, right? Like if you're doing a salsa movement, when you take that step forward, you could take the step forward where you rotate it, right? Where you could go step, boom, cha-cha, cha-cha, I don't know the correct words for it. 1, 2, 3 probably, step, step, 1, 2, 3, hope, boom, 1, 2, 3, right? And I know there's a lot more detail in salsa than just that. But in basic terms, you could do that, and you could have it rotate each time, boom, right? But more likely, you usually use that contra posture, where when you go forward, you go with the other body going shoop, ah, ta, ta, ta. And that's where those arms come through, right? Doing the different things there and stuff like that. So you hit that motion in your contra posture. As an example, right? So thinking about if I summarize so far what we've talked about, to make our dance aesthetically pleasing, we got to look at where we are when we have the stop of motion and make sure the lines are where we want them to be at those moments, kind of where we're being redirected. And then also, as far as when we're going through rotational movement, how do we line up as far as contra posture goes, or in alignment goes, right? So we're thinking about direction and rotation. Those are the two most likely. I mean, there's also height things and leverage things that we could talk about, but in its simplest, like keeping it basic, we've got directional leads and rotational leads. And so, and same thing, even if we're a lead, we've got directional movement and rotational movement. And when we think directions, we want to think, are we hitting those lines that we want to hit when we hit that end of the direction? And then as far as rotation goes, are we hitting the contra posture that we want to have as we go through our rotations? And then, of course, we could talk about what I mentioned, like leveraging it or creating other different angles and things like that. But before we even get into that, another thing that I would talk about that adds to aesthetic in a way, I don't know if it's quite the right word for it, but I think of it kind of as aesthetically pleasing, is dynamics, right? So if you think about the dynamic of your dancing, that's the, another way to put it would be the contrast in your movement. So an example might be if you have a swivel, right? That's a movement in the Lindy Hop. You can swivel, swivel, right? And so you might have some dances where you go doom, doom, da, da, boom, ba, da, da, and that's your bass. Boom, ba, da, da, and then you boom, ba, shoo, da. Changing it up by the rhythm's still the same. Watch. 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, and 4, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Right? Those were 3 different methods of doing the 1, 2 that all technically are the same timing of the step. It's still stepping on the 1 and stepping on the 2. But I'm speeding up the way that I do it. I'm contrasting from doing everything at the same tempo to going really fast and then holding for longer, and then really fast and then holding for longer. I can go 1, 2, right? Or I can go 1, 2, 3, and 4. Or I can go 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? So those contrasts, I don't know if technically that's the right word, that they're aesthetically pleasing. But I feel like they add to that, but you still want to have, it's still, to make it aesthetically pleasing, you still need the lines and all the other things. But I think that's when your aesthetics become interesting, is when you start playing with the timing of how you do things. Oh, and one more summary that I forgot is, again, I mentioned this earlier, but to think about the angles between every joint in your body, really. So if we look at all the joints, we've got the ankle joint, we've got the knee joint, we've got the hip joint, right? We've got technically a whole bunch of, I don't know if joints is the right word, but in our spine, there's a whole bunch of areas where we can bend, right? Basically any area that we can bend. So we could bend all of those. We could round out our back, or we could round out just the bottom of our back and straighten the top, right? Or we could straighten the bottom and round out the top, right? Or we could keep the whole thing rounded, right? Or we could straighten the whole thing, right? Straighten it. Or we could even concave it, right? So there's all these options. And the question is, what aesthetic are we looking for? And usually, it doesn't, I find, matter too much, as long as you have a very clear purpose behind it and it looks like that. Like, there's people that have done all sorts of things that were like, don't do this, but they do it, and they do it with purpose, and it looks cool. You know, follows that used to dance with like this hyper extended back here, and they're like way leveraged out like this, bam, bam, but they look really cool doing it because they're really into it and they're leveraging it like crazy. So for me, that I don't know that there's any like right way to do it or wrong way to do it, as much as there's intention behind what you're doing, and you're using what you're doing in a way that makes sense for you. Then people see it and they go, oh, wow, that's really cool. Let's see, was there anything else as far as the look? Oh, I wanted to point out the other joints. So we have the back, then there's the, the neck, right? The neck muscle to straighten that or to curve it. The shoulder angle, and the shoulder angle, we have like the up, down, of it, as well as the in, out of it, right? And then there's the bicep angle or the elbow joint. And then there's the wrist joint. And then there's the finger joints, right? And thumb joint, right? So all of those like are the things that you want to look at and look at what angles am I creating? What angles do I want to be creating? Especially in those static moments. Those are the points where it's really obvious and seen is when we slow down, redirect. I don't know if static's the best word. It's just the moment of 0 point and it goes back the other way. Technically, it's even if you go like this and there's almost no static, there's like a moment of static. Oh, another thing. Now, I know some of you are driving or something like that. You can't get up with me and do these things, but I should say this at the beginning. Anytime you see me doing something, I recommend you just get up and you practice, like, watch what I'm doing and match me. Like, one of the most valuable like aspects that I find for any, whether you're a lead or follow, is the ability to match your partner, right? And everything. Even right now, you could be doing it just for fun, like matching my posture, matching my arm bends and things like that as I'm talking to you, and just playing with that, matching your body. Because a lot of time in these lessons, it's harder for me to have you actually do something and me to see you do it and then critique it and all that kind of stuff. So I ask you guys to be a little bit more proactive in when you see something, oh, I want to try that, just try it out. You know, get up there, physically move your body, even if you're on a desk. Like every time we teach a call, I always have one of these with me, and it's just a scarf and it's tied to a doorknob. That way, if I ever need a partner, I've got a partner that I can show you, like, this is what I would do if I had a partner, if I'm following, right? I've got this motion and I can do that. Or if I'm leading, this is my movement right there. Sorry. So I have something and I can actually feel the force I can use to move myself with it, to have it move me, things like that. It's not the point of this question, but something just in general, a good idea to have with you to play with and practice. Because most of the stuff, when I practice, I often practice on my own. I'm traveling the world on my own most of the time, so I don't have a regular practice partner. So I'm usually just working with every, you know, doorknob or fridge or chair or anything in the world that I can interact with, I play with and I think of as a dance partner.